My mother told me that at age, I think 2, maybe I was 3, they said to my mother that I was a perfectionist. And my mother thought, oh, well, that's nice. But it is a real thing.
Yeah, wow.
Which isn't great.
Yeah.
The thing is about it is that what it is good for is attention to detail in art.
Right.
But that is probably why my films take a long time.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
This is part 2 of my interview with Crispin Glover. He once again joined me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
I could have just written something that was strictly autobiographical and people would say, oh, this is this. But I didn't do that. So it's more of like an emotional element that is represented with things that I don't see that there would be a way that anybody could reverse engineer what it was that I was actually, which is fine again. That wasn't the purpose of it. It was the purpose, ideally, was to evoke something in the audience that they would feel, and I think some kind of connectivity.
Simply by it being charged with something that means something to you.
Yes.
It brings up something in us that like we are affected by that charge.
Right. And I know that this podcast also deals with acting, and of course that's something in acting as well, where sense memory or sensory elements, an audience that doesn't exactly know what somebody's thinking about or feeling, but they can feel something in relation to what the story is, and it may relate to the words very specifically to the performer, but it would come off differently or it might be very exact. It's just it depends, but that's a big part of subtext in acting, but then because of coming from acting, I'm aware of that for filmmaking as well. I guess the most valuable thing that I have as a filmmaker in a certain way is coming from acting, but second to that would be, and I might even surpass it at this point, would be I won't say it surpasses it. Everything's important, but editing, having taught myself editing and the editing aspects, that's really important.
Yes, it's huge.
And the more I've known about editing, the more it also makes me understand what I need to capture as a filmmaker. Although, like this film, which is true of my first film, less true of the second film, but my shooting ratio is pretty high. So I think though still it was highest on the first film. I could be wrong about that, but I was shooting on 16 millimeter, which was expensive for me at the time, but in a certain way less. It's half the cost essentially 35. To shoot on 16 millimeter. So 35, one is ever more aware of how many takes. But I've never.
But what are we talking about? Like what 6-1 maybe, or
no, higher than that.
Wow.
I think I could be wrong. I think on what is it? It may have been as high as something like 20-1.
Wow.
And then on this film, I think it was about 10-1. I think. But I cut a lot of stuff. I cut entire sequences, scenes, characters. If there's a fair amount of information gap in between one thing to the next, well, it was purposeful both in the writing, but especially in the editing. I like when you have to go, where are we now?
But you also have those titles up telling us what year. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you don't want us to be completely
right. I was trying to give clues. Yeah. But knowing that that's where I was relying on the surreal aspect where, yes, there are clues. Like in Un Chien Andalou, there are in summertime, or maybe I'm thinking of L'Âge d'Or on Tuesday, but there's been no, there's been nothing before that gave you.
Yeah, and it's funny what we instantly like makes us relax as an audience. Like, just I guess like symbols make us feel like, oh, okay, I know what this is, kind of. Or like you're saying, you just give a little clue.
Yeah.
We chill out for a second.
Right.
Then you present things.
Right.
Then you can give another clue and like, oh, okay, I think I know where I am here.
Right.
Present things.
And I mean, and I was aware of that, but also it wasn't so mapped out necessarily, although then I edited and like I said, I re-edited the film 4 months ago, and I changed it quite a lot. Orders, and I think I did add one more title element, and then and the whole beginning was different. And I even though it had been locked for a number of years, there was something that was nagging at me the whole time, and then I am happy with the cut. It is good that I cut it from the 90 to 85 and rearranged things. And it was last minute up to the just days before the premiere.
Wow.
To have it. There's actually a couple little, not editing things, just a couple little color things that I'll shift, and maybe one sound thing. But I'm happy with the film.
Do you have trusted people that you show stuff to along the way?
I have, particularly on the first film, What Is It? I showed it to both Adam Parfrey, who died in 2018, and he was a publisher, and he plays a part in What Is It? And then David Brothers, who I co-directed the second film with. I showed both of them. I trusted them quite a bit. And then I showed both of them early cuts of this film. And Adam had he was quite brutal about it, which I was appreciative of.
Yeah.
But Adam hated it. He did not like the movie. But this was when it was just No, You're Wrong. And he said, essentially, I should just throw it away.
Wow.
and that I should make a doc. That the interest, he said, is of me and my father, and that I should just make a documentary about making the film with my father, which I didn't do, obviously, but it did. That start making me think, because I'm not going to throw the film away. But this is also why I fund my films and don't have funders, because it would be unfair for me to have somebody invest in something and then take a decade to possibly show returns. And of course, most films lose money.
I would love you to talk about, firstly, what spooky action at a distance is referring to. I know that's a Einstein quote.
Yeah.
If you could briefly explain that, and then explain how that pertains to the film and made you actually want to make it part of the title.
Well, I think I really should look it up. I think somebody else coined the term spooky action at a distance, a different physicist. Schrodinger? I don't know. I could be wrong about who it is. But Einstein
said it,
talked about it, and for him particularly, the spooky part is because essentially the concept is that the fastest speed is the speed of light, and yet with entanglement, which is another word for spooky action at a distance, and I think even a great physicist that understands everything about physics says you can never really understand about the quantum. It's really bizarre. But from what I understand, I'm playing with it poetically. It's not, but at the same time, there is a concept that relates. So there are two particles, subatomic particles in the quantum, that can get attached energetically in some way. And I don't know how you would move them apart distance-wise once they're attached. But the idea is that if they were this close to each other, they move instantaneously. They're locked in some kind of energetic attachment, entanglement, but the idea is that even if they were across the universe, they would still instantaneously move, which means there's a force that's way faster than light, and that's the what's spooky, because there's nobody knows. It's just but they've proven it. They've replicated it. They know that this exists. So the best titles for it are either spooky action at a distance or entanglement. That's what people call it. The spooky action at a distance has a bit of a humor to it, because it's just admitting we don't know what it's. So it's spooky because we don't know what it is. But so you could attach that to almost anything that you don't know about. But what I was noticing when I expanded the film, and I sort of describe it, but I describe it about something that is veiled and that's not referenced within the film, so I can understand where it wouldn't be easily detectable, which is purposeful. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it was a strange thing that happened. What I'm talking about is someone hanged herself that I knew, and I had written something in a screenplay, and the for a character that she was supposed to play, and she had when reading that years before had said, it's too dark. And I because she had a kind of a comedic sense, which the screenplay, which is a different screenplay, not this screenplay, had comedic elements, but it also had serious elements, and that was a serious moment. And I said, well, it's not a pure comedy, it has dark elements. And she said, well, there's things in my head. So she kind of trailed off, and then I realized later that I had detailed what had been in her head, which she eventually enacted. And so I don't go in. I say it very quickly in the movie, but that's what I'm talking about. So that was that to me was spooky action at a distance. I mean, you could also call it life imitates art. But she had said it to me in advance. And I noticed it wasn't just that. There were multiple things like that in the film, and none of them were particularly happy things. And there's a scene where I'm talking to an actress in the film that plays one of the characters in the film, and that was a replication of essentially how that came about. I was sitting talking with that actress at dinner about that subject matter, and that for whatever reason that was the vocabulary that came to me. Another vocabulary you could say is life imitates art, but for whatever reason that isn't what came to my mind, and that's just what I blurted out.
And how do you process that? Like you're on this journey making this thing. It's very long. I'm assuming this happened like kind of midway through the process.
It happened before I started making the spooky action at a distance part, which was 4 years into shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess this is your way of kind of processing it through art.
Yeah. That's absolutely what was going on. I mean, the other thing, it kept happening. My father died this year.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I'm laughing, but of course, you go through a real mourning.
Yeah.
And that is reflected in the film. So it was part of this thing, which was I really wanted to get the film done before. The last 2 years of his life, I knew things could happen with him.
Yeah.
And so I was really, really trying to get the film done. I didn't want that to be a part of the film.
Yeah.
But I also knew if that happened, it would have to be a part of the film. And it almost felt like I could. It's strange. What's also strange, and part of the spooky action at a distance, is that within months then of my father's death, I was able to finally get the movie out.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the same time, basically every character in the movie dies.
Yeah.
And of course, in reality, everybody dies. So basically, that will at some point be true of everybody. So
yes.
Yeah. I mean, these are things that I don't necessarily. These are flashes of thoughts that go off in your head, but then. What is it? I think Kubrick said an aesthetic opportunist. So it's like you might as well put stuff into something if there's a truth in it, and yet I didn't want these truths, but then there they were. So you might as well. If it's in your head, why not? But it was strange how it was there already, and then it just kept on going.
Yeah. This is a weird question, but if you are making a film, and hopefully this is many, 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 many years from now, and you happen to pass away, would you want someone to finish it and include that in the film?
Well, yeah. I mean, my thought process about death is it wouldn't matter. I mean, whatever. I wouldn't be aware of it.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, sure. I think it'd be fine. There's a couple of really excellent filmmakers whose last films are questionable as to what the outcome would be. There's Fassbinder's last film, which is what is it called?
Curiel. Is that how you say it?
Yeah. To me, it's not one of his best films. I think his last film that he was still alive for is one of his best films, called Veronica Voss.
Yes.
That one's great. But there's a narrator in it who has kind of a deep voiced narration. I've only seen it once. It has nice production design. And that one is that word formalist. It looks like it's on sets and stages. But he would regularly narrate his own movies, and he was a great narrator.
Yeah.
And an excellent actor as well as filmmaker. So I'm sure the feeling would have been very different if he had narrated the film. And then the other one that people talk about a lot is Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, and he was famous for, even after a film was released, taking it and cutting out big sequences. So I would consider both of those films unfinished. But you can see their work. There's hypnotic elements in Eyes Wide Shut that are certainly Kubrick at his perfectionist editing. But there's no doubt he would have continued probably until right when it was released, and possibly taken it back and done more. Who knows? It's hard to know.
I would love you to give us a little bit of like a glimpse at what it was like filming this, because when you talked about, I forget where you talked about it. Maybe no, it was some other interview where you said you don't have a first AD, and I thought that was Very interesting.
I would prefer to have an AD. I would prefer to shoot in the standard corporate way. Not everything about the corporate world is terrible. If the corporate world wanted to fund my films and release my movies, great. I'd be all for it. My critique of the corporate world is it doesn't right now want to make movies that are questioning. At the time Kubrick was making films, they did.
Yeah.
And not just in so-called independent films, but in the studio movies. And something about the 60s and 70s, there's a waxing and waning of control, and it seems like we're continually going into a more corporate control situation that even that I was detecting in the 80s, but I look back and although it's a strange thing because in some ways the more corporate control there is, it also people start to recognize it, and then they want. I mean, I'm getting audiences in to see the movie, and I haven't even had a formal review yet.
That's amazing.
But people, I mean, it was, on my first two films, the New York Times reviewed it, but this one, New York Times hasn't reviewed, which I would have loved for the New York Times to review it. It's of course a good advertisement, no matter what. And on my first two films, particularly What Is It, I was completely ready to have a totally negative review. But I knew it didn't matter for that film because I didn't sell the film as being I didn't sell the provocative elements within the film. The way I personally sold it was about the conceptualization of what it was. But the people that didn't like the movie would write all of the things that were provocative, which I never would sell it that way. They sold it that way, which was funny because so it was like a negative review. It didn't matter because
it almost helped. Maybe
it was a selling point. People said, "Oh, well, I haven't seen that," and then they'd be curious and come see it, which is something I've been worried about for this film actually because it isn't provocative.
Right.
I haven't known. I've known that there's something saleable about the provocative elements, so I didn't know what would necessarily be the selling point, but I feel like luckily I stuck my foot in the door as the salesman. and so there are people that are aware that I've made some films, and there are repeat customers that come back. It's not the large corporate kind of sales element, but there are people that for whatever reason they're interested in unusual things and or what I happen to be doing. So I mean, I know this isn't going to be a gigantic thing, but on the first two films I think I explained before, I did recoup on the first two films, but the way I recouped was, and it was 6 years into touring when I recouped, and I toured for 15 years altogether. But when I say recouped, I mean it was 50% by what's charged over for the live show, 25% by the book sales, and then 25% by the box office. So even with the 15 years of touring, I never recouped by the box office on its own. But that didn't matter to me. I was just, as long as I recouped. This film, because it was costs more than both of those films put together by more than double. This was a much more expensive film. I won't recoup, even if I toured for 20 years straight. I won't. But again, the important aspect is that I can utilize the infrastructure that I've built up to have a high production quality, because I like to shoot on sets, and I have other productions in mind. I've already started shooting another one that I can utilize these sets for. That brings my costs of my next productions to be much lower. So essentially I built a boutique shooting studio for myself.
Sometimes when music is too interruptive, when I actually notice it, I think it's a problem. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
if it's baked in.
I don't remember if I talked about it last time, but I I've noticed there's different ways that different filmmakers utilize their musical scores, and there are 3 or 4 examples that use them somewhat differently. Would be Fellini with Nina Rota.
Yes.
Which, when you see a Nina Rota movie, I mean a Fellini film, you think of Nina Rota, and it's
you
great.
Walk away humming it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you think about with the film. And he uses the scores differently than, say, Pierre Rabin is the name of the composer for Fassbinder. And I've purchased the CD for Pierre Rabin's music, which is really good, but you do not, in the way that Fellini, when you think about Rabin, you're listening to this Pierre Rabin music, and it's light and airy, and when you think of a Fassbinder film, essentially his theme is almost always the complete physical and psychological destruction of a human being. That's mostly what his films entail. So they feel dark, but that's not what when you're listening to the music, they're very light. So he's using his music almost in opposition to the way that Fellini's using it. And Fellini, I think, if you look at the structure of his films, he's looser with his plot points. Some of them there's that great plot point in 8½, where the character shoots himself and you think he's dead. It's a good example of death and resurrection. Yeah. So that's a strong plot point. But a lot of times his plot points are looser. Yeah. And I feel like it was hurtful for his films when Nina Rota died, because Nina Rota's music is so great.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And there's a looseness with the both the structure and the plot points in Fellini's films, so that somehow the way the music pulls you through it, it's enjoyable. There's an entertainment. So it's a very interesting mix, and he's one of the all-time great filmmakers. But then the way that Kubrick uses music, and then the way that Sergio Leone uses music, in a certain way they're similar to each other, and in a certain way they're dissimilar, because Kubrick and Sergio Leone use themes for characters. I mean, all of them do that to an extent, but I feel like it's a little bit looser with Fassbinder and Pierre Rabin. But there are themes, but it's not as exacting. Whereas with Leone, those themes are very evident. That character walks in, the harmonica plays, or what have you. And Kubrick is like that, but he doesn't use a composer. He tends toward finding pre-existing music, which that's what I tend toward doing, is just because my mother was, I think I've been doing so many interviews, I can't remember what I've said in what interview, but my mother was a trained ballet dancer, and then was here in New York and did musicals. She understudied Gwen Verdon in Damn Yankees, and then she toured playing the Lola character in a touring version of Damn Yankees. So when my parents met and were married, my mother had more success and had made more money in her chosen career than my father had made. And then when I was born, my mother retired. But we had a lot of it was ballet music around, and I would listen to that. I always liked it, and then I expanded into other music. That's what I tend toward listening to, as opposed to contemporary songs. I mean, I've grown up in the culture, so I'm aware of it, but I'm more passionate about the repertoire that exists of the, I don't like to even say classical, because there's Baroque, then classical, then Beethoven, post-Beethoven, Romantic, and then modern. But every human emotion, I know it well enough that I'm comfortable to be able to recollect what human emotion either needs to be emphasized with music or countered. And that I think is really important, is the countering, because if you emphasize it too much, it becomes too much of the same information. And the easy example is if something's sad and you have a sad violin, it becomes maudlin. So it's better if something's sad, either to let that play, or sometimes it's helpful to emphasize. It just depends. One has to be sensitive to that.
And you feel like you are. See, that's the one aspect of filmmaking that I feel very not confident about. Like, every time I'm like, all right, this music will work here, and then I get very, very hesitant about my decision, and then later
about music.
Yeah, I just take it out, and then I show somebody, oh, thank God you took that out. I was like, wait, that wasn't working. I thought it was. They're like, no, that was. I should have told you. That. This happens over and over again. Funny. Like I don't like. I'm not in tune with what it does. I'm in tune as an audience. If somebody showed me a film, I would be able to say, whoa, that's not matching. Like what you just said there, that is too much emphasizing that moment.
Thing is, it's good to recognize, obviously, what one is good at and not good. I feel like I'm relatively sensitive with music. I mean, maybe I could self-critique saying I utilize too much music, perhaps. But I don't think so. I think I use the right amount of music. But what I know, one thing I'm really not good at is mixing sound. I'm terrible at it. And I'm not technically, I've self-taught myself with editing, but my mixes are so horrible. I'm really bad at that. And of course I do, so in the end, there are certain things, I hire professionals that fix my very bad sound mixes are terrible. I'm good visually. I'm good with.
So what about color correct? Like, were you doing your own color correcting?
No, I had a professional František who did the color correction. But he came up with a lot of good ideas. You know.
But you trust your eye, though. Like you're not,
absolutely. Yeah, visual. I'm very, very specific with. But it took, with the color correction, that took a long time. There was no way, even if I'd gone to school for it, there would be no way. There would be no way to be teaching what I learned while doing it, because everything was shot Fuji except for the contemporary, which was shot Kodak. Then with the 1868, 1888, we reshot with the hand crank camera in monochrome, black and white film. The 1868 was hand processed. The 1888 was processed by a laboratory. Then the 1868 was hand frame by frame dyed. To add colors. And then, and there's only 2 minutes of footage of that. And then the 1918, the 1888, originally what I was wanting was 2-strip Technicolor, which, did I talk about this before?
Somewhere. I remember you saying about it. And it's almost impossible to do that nowadays. To do the 2-strip.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, you could do anything probably digitally. In fact, I've seen AI, I think, is actually quite impressive with their replication of different sort of film stocks, and I'm pretty sure if I gave an instruction to an AI to do a recreate a two-strip Technicolor, I think it would probably do it pretty well, better than most other way. It's hard to do. We tried to do it; it didn't look right. Maybe if I took the footage now and just input it into something, it might have been able to do exactly what I wanted. I suspect it could, but anyhow, that wasn't around even those just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So there actually was something that we tried that was an early AI thing. It didn't work, but I think it would now probably. But so we did something. We didn't try to make it two-strip Technicolor. There's another thing called stencil coloring which also that technology doesn't exist, but I can kind of tell what even the word stencil means. They probably had some format in the area. So if it's an ocean, maybe that would be a blue-green, and the sky or trees would be green. So, and it looked different than the hand frame by frame. So we did something to try to do that for the 1888 parts, and I'm pleased with how it came out. There's actually a couple little areas that's where there's a couple things I'd like to.
You're seeing things that no one else sees.
Right, and then definitely, and then what I was trying to do initially in the 1918 part was three-strip Technicolor, which is a little bit different than Technicolor. But neither of those things are easy. It's impossible to replicate because it wasn't a photographic process. It was. Right. I went to a symposium about it in the night. I've been interested in this for a long time. So I went to a symposium about the Technicolor process at the American Cinematheque in the 90s, and they were trying to bring it back. I think it was the early 90s, maybe it was mid 90s. In fact, they did shoot one film, reutilized it, American film. It was The Thin Red Line. I think that's what it was. They and if you look, you can see there's a shot of a bird, and it's vivid. The reds. But also Technicolor had changed a bit. I don't know exactly what they did, but it was done with machines. They called it a matrices, and it was a non-photographic process. I wish they put all the hundreds of millions of dollars into all these things. Just recreate a Technicolor machine. That way, I don't know how much it would cost, but at the same time, a lot of these technologies are lost. Like just the machining that is done. I think Kubrick's use of the Mitchell camera for Barry Lyndon, which he remachined in order to fit those big Canon-sized lenses. I talked to somebody I was having some camera repaired at Cinema Products. Those lenses had something to do with Cinema Products, and my 16 millimeter cameras that I shot my second film on, which I updated to Super 16 cameras. Somebody that was working on one of them, fixing them, had told me he had physically worked on those lenses, and he said he held them, and it was like holding a Canon in his hands. But they were big lenses, and so the Mitchell camera was a very sturdy camera, and that's why Kubrick used it, is because this
is all for low light, the low light.
Yes, he remachined the socket for to fit the lenses into. I could be saying the wrong technical terms, but so they could, and there was a really steady camera, which it needed to be because the depth of focus was so minimal. You needed as much sturdiness and steadiness as possible. And there's a funny story. There's some what is it called? The Kubrick series. They were trying to interview everybody that worked with Kubrick in any capacity, and it's a really good resource. I've listened to a lot of it, and that there's somebody talking about that he worked at, I don't know which, if it was at Warner, some studio that Kubrick had worked at one point, and Kubrick said, the guy in the interview says, Kubrick called him and said, "Oh, gee, I'd really like, there's something sentimental about those old Mitchell cameras. I know you guys have some of them. Do you think I might be able to get one of those?" And he said, "Sure, I'll look into it." And he got it, so Kubrick was able to take one of them. And then a year later, somebody said, "What? I see that this Mitchell camera is missing. What happened to the Mitchell camera?" He said, "Oh, I let Stanley have it." And he said, "You can't begin. There's no way you could recreate this camera with the technology is gone. It's just these things were so precisely made."
Wow.
And I mean, it's something I get a little bit concerned about because I own my own equipment, and my 35 millimeters Aeroflex, which is a pretty standard, but my 16 millimeter is Cinema Products. It's a good camera, but I get concerned that at some point in time something could go wrong. I have a couple of them. But there's a place I work with in Ohio. They'll do remachining, but these are the kind of things that at a certain point people will die out.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
go away. And if they don't pass it on, or they pass it on badly, to the next generation. Yeah,
it's questionable. And then Kai Meidendorp, who was my DP. Luckily, he was a last-minute replacement too, but he knew how to work with 35 because there less and less people are knowing how to do that as well.
Right. Well, I have to ask you this because I have a very I don't know how to say this. Love-hate is too strong. I go back and forth. Of course, I went to film school. I edited all of my films on film with no digital whatsoever. Literally film in my mouth, figuring out which side was the emotion, Steenbecks. I don't go to see movies anymore unless they're prints, right? I only want to see prints. I'm talking about old movies.
Well,
of course, not new movies.
I don't 100% agree with that.
Well, no, I know.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. And at the same time, I will never, ever shoot on film again.
Never shoot. Oh.
Yeah. We'll never shoot on film. I think it's to me, unless you're going to go the whole process analog, I don't understand it. And this is what I want you to explain to me, because I actually don't trust a lot of people. I think I trust you because you look into these things quite in depth. So you shoot on 35.
Right.
But you spend years color correcting digitally.
No.
Well,
there's a combination of things that are happening.
But it's not like you're going into the lab and pulling it out and adjusting in the lab.
It depends. Like on the first two films, I did and I will do 35 millimeter print of this film as well. So there was color correction. When I did the 35 millimeter print, there's another step of color correction that happens in the 35 millimeter laboratory, and I did both of those at Photochem. So that is why I want to do a 35 millimeter print, because the way that color adheres to film is different from how it works in digital, and you can feel it and see it.
And that's the reason why you choose film, right? That right
there.
Well,
but there's multiple steps, and that's why I'm not anti-digital. Digital saved me.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for digital, because my on what is it? My original plan, because I started shooting that in 1995. That's 30 years ago. So at the time. I shot it on regular 16. So at the time, there were still cinemas that, not a lot of them, but there were still some cinemas that would project
Yeah.
on 16.
Yeah.
So my original plan when I was shooting in 95 was that I was going to be completely in the world of film, no digital, and that I would have film prints of the 16 millimeter. And I started, I don't know if they're still here, a company called Sino Shore was here in New York. I was sending out the negatives from Los Angeles, but I had 100 opticals is what the
Yes.
word was in the film world. Now it's a digital effect.
Yeah.
But opticals, you're blind. It's an optical printer,
Yeah.
which has to go by the SMPTE timecode
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
And there was something that had happened. I only found this out years later. I didn't know what was going wrong, but the SMPTE timecode had been laid incorrectly on the, I think it was, maybe it was a 3/4 tape. I don't think it was 1 inch, but it meant that I was getting these opticals back from here in New York. This was all film process, and I spent a lot of money. I mean, it was, at the time, $10,000 was a lot of money for me. And I'd spent it more than $10,000 on these opticals and it took years, and I couldn't, it was a number of frames off. It was only after digital came in that and the prices had come down enough to do a digital intermediate that I found they were able, somebody that was an expert with numbers was able to figure out that it had been laid down, I can't remember, maybe it was 6 frames off or something. But there was no way to tell in the eye because you're blind. You're having to go by these numbers, and it was incorrect. So had the digital not existed, there was no way I would have been able to make any of the effects, and they were important for the film. So digital saved me, and then by that time, with having the digital intermediate, a decade essentially had passed, and I would only be able to. It didn't make sense to do a 16 millimeter print, so it made more sense to blow up to a 35 millimeter print, which now there's probably as many 35 millimeter houses
as there was 16 back then.
Yeah. So now it's turning over into the 35, into the DCP as the main thing. Now the thing about DCP, and I understand the element of purism, and there is something good about purist film. I agree. I'm all for it, but there's also just what can one get done.
Yes.
And I mean, for film, if you've shot on a film negative, that grain is captured. There is an argument also in the opposite direction about film. When you do a print of a film, well, it used to, I don't know the truth of this now, but most prints that you would see, certainly in the 70s and 80s, were struck from what they call an inner negative. So your inner negative isn't the original negative of the film; it's a copy of the negative. So it's a generation removed.
You lost a generation.
So then your print is 3 generations away from the original. Whereas if you do a digital
of the original negative,
you're 2 generations closer to the original negative of the film. It's essentially a clone of your negative. So there is an argument to be made for a DCP of the original negative is closer to what was actually the optimal thing, and if you're looking for grain, you'll see that grain in a 4K transfer. So what one is looking for. There's 2 things one can be looking for with a print. One are the deformations, like the little corner change marks, which, that's not what anybody wanted really, but it was the way to inform the projectionist that this was coming up. and then scratches or what have you. These are charming in nostalgia, but it isn't really what the ideal was.
Right.
The ideal would be that you wouldn't see those things. The thing that in black and white, it doesn't really matter. I suppose there can be some, it becomes more contrasty the more generations you've copied. So sometimes high contrast is very nice. I like high contrast. But in terms of color, there is a difference. And so your original negative is going to have a different color timing than the positive print. And that you go in through steps, which I did with the first two films. With actually with What Is It, I did that at Photochem, and I was already in Czech by the time I did the print for It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. But I did the same color correction process at both laboratories. And that is important. That's the last thing in a film print, the last artistic decision that a filmmaker's making, unless somehow they do little last minute changes on the sound around that same time. But basically, no, you have to have the film sound, because then the film is married to the sound. So the last possible artistic decision you can make is your color correction on your film print. And there is something to it. I have essentially a digital negative of my first two films, but I prefer the film print because there were slight color corrections, and the way that the color adheres to the film is different, and it looks like a film print. So I prefer, but you could then make a DCP of that film print, which would capture that, and then, I mean, you could argue that there's a slight generation removed of whatever the clone, the digitization of that film print. So it'd be better to show the film print. But anyhow, for my films,
then you got to worry about the bulb of the projector. And
yes,
that
makes a difference.
And is it old?
Yeah, no, I notice it very, very well. If you're in a larger venue,
the switching of the projectors, especially on a black and white film.
Well, but also less thinking about the difference between the two projectors, and more thinking about the difference between a venue with a projector. But that's even true of the digital projection. If you're in a much larger venue, the light has to throw from further back, and it becomes a dimmer image. And if you're in a smaller venue with the projector closer to the screen, it tends toward being a brighter image. I've definitely noticed that.
And how do you travel with these films? Go everywhere with these films, and then not rip your hair out with the different places that these things play.
Well, early on, there was one place they got mad at me because I was upset. They actually damaged. They had an inexperienced projectionist, and they damaged my print, and I didn't know what the process was. It didn't cost. Now it would be even more expensive, just because every film is rare. But I had to get. I think what I ended up. I think what I did. Now I'm forgetting. I think I did end up replacing the whole reel, but the film was five reels. So both of my first two films are 5 reels. So each film weighs about approximately 50 pounds. So what I would do, if I was traveling with the two films, I would put one. So they are in big cases. One is, I think, a 3-reel case, and the other is a 2-reel case for What Is It. Then at Barendorf, they were in plastic cases. Each reel is in its own case. But I would put in one suitcase, let's see, how did I do it? One suitcase I'd put the 3 reel, another suitcase I'd put 2 reels, and then in my carry-on I was able to fit. It was all of the Barendorf plastic cases in a carry-on because they don't weigh carry-on. That could change at any moment, but they.
Yeah.
I mean, some airlines will weigh, and I don't fly those airlines when I'm doing that. But so I had a 50-pound case that was a carry-on just with the films, and then a personal item that would attach to that, and then the 2 suitcases that were my check-ins. Half of it would be say 30 pounds of the 3, and then 20 pounds in the other, and then if I had some clothes. But basically, that's what I was traveling with. So I had it very specified.
Yeah.
Of course, now with the DCP, there isn't that issue.
Yeah.
So there are practical elements, but I because of all the work that was done in the color correction, the generations removed, particularly for the 1868 and 1888, because we shot off of a monitor with a hand crank camera. So, but we were looking to. It's essentially a filter.
Right.
A film is a filter.
Right.
You can argue that an image is sharper when shot. Say what are they going up to 5K or
8K now? Or
probably.
like that.
So that's definitely going to have more information than a 35 millimeter print. But do you want that? It's not particularly attractive necessarily.
Right.
And I believe most, if not all films, I think we should all update our vocabulary to, if a film is shot on film, whether it's Super 8, 16, Super 16, 35, Super 35, 70 millimeter film, then it's film.
Yeah.
Call that a film.
Call it a film,
If a movie is shot digitally, then call it a movie or a motion picture.
Right.
Because don't call it a film, because that's a different medium.
Yeah.
Yes, call it a motion picture, call it a movie.
Yeah.
And we have those words. So why not? I think we should update our vocabulary. If a film is shot on a film negative, call it a film.
Yeah.
If a movie is shot digitally, call it a movie.
Why are we still calling? Yeah.
It should be called. Well, you see people say, "I filmed this," but they well, that's also then there's also the word video, but it's actually not video. It's a digital capture.
Right.
So it's a little cumbersome to say I'm digitally capturing.
Yes.
So I can understand why they shooting, though. You can say shooting.
Shooting. Yes.
Shooting as opposed to filming, but unless you're filming. If you're filming on a film, then you're filming.
But let me ask you this. Isn't it like let's just say in people who want to go into the music studio and record on analog tape because it's, quote, warmer, right? And then, though, they process digitally and I listen digitally. And then you think, okay, so what did you really gain from that tape? Like, okay, a warm sound. Are you telling me that you couldn't create that digitally, that sound? And if I bring this over to film, when you start with film, and you're doing all of this and you're kind of work afterwards, and yes, it could go back to a film essentially, but even seems silly, doesn't it? Like to bring something back to a film. With
audio, I'm much more of a cinephile than I am an audiophile.
Yeah.
But when I first had a DVD player and I still had vinyl records, I listened to the same recording. Maybe it was the Amadeus soundtrack or something from the movie. And I listened carefully to the difference between the vinyl and the CD, and I could tell the difference. Yes, the vinyl was better. It was richer. I could hear the difference. But I'm not enough of an audiophile for the convenience of being able to listen to the music digitally. I totally agree. There's no question vinyl is a better audio experience. But moving around carrying boxes of heavy vinyl records, I'm not enough of an audiophile.
Yeah.
However, I am enough of a cinephile, a filmophile, to notice the difference, to carry around 50-pound bags of my films. I visually am attenuated to those elements. And that being said, when I'm visually looking at it, there are some sequences in the film that, because we had reshot and we're losing generations there, and and it was monochrome, there were portions that became too contrasty, and so we had to repair it digitally, so you couldn't see the eyes of characters. So we physically had to bring from the pre-reshooting of it, but it was on film, and no audience would be able to tell this. I know it because I could see that you couldn't see the eyes.
Yeah.
And so František also did the digital work of inserting the eyes into, and then making it monochrome. It was a lot of work. I'm calling some of this color correction. There was also digital correction as well. But there would be no way to correct that on film.
That's right.
So, and it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks better seeing their eyes than not being able to see their eyes. And they were both shot on film.
Yeah.
So it has a filmic quality. But the next step, I will be doing a film print, but we will have to go back. I just needed it. This took all these years to get to having the DCP. But if we took that same shot and just output it to film, the same thing would happen. You wouldn't be able to see the eyes.
Yes.
So we will have to go back in and recolor correct to have less contrast, because film makes it more contrasty. So
there's
it's
more work.
There's more work. Yeah, they know that that nothing is. All the stuff is on file, and I have more work, and have to pay more money to do it. But I will do it, because I do know there's a difference, and ultimately that probably will be my favorite when it's done. But that could take another year or more. The things are slower in Czech, I'll say that. That's also, there's a culture difference that's I've never gotten used to about how work is dealt with there. That really does drive me crazy.
It's like a slowness, like a
something
lackadaisical.
I can't describe. It's hard to describe. I won't blame the time things took on that, but it didn't help.
Yeah.
But I mean, I tend toward being slow. I don't like that. I wish I was much faster.
Well, what about on the set? Because you're doing this yourself, because you're the boss, because there is no corporate thing.
Oh yeah, we were talking about the first AD thing.
Yeah. So what is that?
I shot a page a day.
Wow.
Which is terrible.
Well, that's beautiful though, in a way, because it was a 50-page screenplay.
The original Know You're Wrong was a 50-page screenplay. So I did the first production segment was 1868, 1888. It was 10 pages. We shot for 10 days. Second production segment, the following year, was 1918. We shot 1 10-day and 1 20 days. So that's 30 days. And then, is that right? That's 40 days. Then in the following year, in 2015, we shot a 10-day production segment for the 1948. So that was 50 days, 50 pages, 1 page a day.
Yeah.
I mean, the original screenplay, the original cut of Know You're Wrong was about 85 minutes. So it was a feature film, but I cut that down, and when I started adding the spooky action at distance.
Yeah.
But 1 page a day. So yeah, I didn't have a first AD, and I just would do my shot lists. Kai was an ant, essentially. He was being the gaffer as well as the DP, carrying around the lights. I mean, some of the lights were preset. I had purchased all the lights with the advice of a different person that was originally supposed to shoot that worked at FAMU, but again, that didn't happen. So, but he had helped figure out what the lighting was going to be, and I purchased my lights from China. For the most part, the Chinese lights were good, except for I had a, what is it called? Not HDMI. It's the light that HMI, I think it's called. The like light that replicates sunlight.
Yeah.
Because I had Fuji sunlight film. So some of the stuff that was shot interior was shot with HMI. I think that's the correct light. So and those did blow out. That caused some problems. The other lights, the tungsten lights were from China, were good, but I would not use HMI lights again, mainly just because the other lights I still have, and I'll use them again. Which were tungsten lights, but that's you use tungsten film for that, and that's not a problem.
But this is like, and you say this, you use this word not pejoratively. You're an amateur.
Yes.
And this is the height of amateur filmmaking. Like this is like meaning, and everyone thinks it's hard to. You almost have to say it after you say it because everybody thinks that word is bad.
Yeah, it's not.
But it comes from love.
Right. Love for the love of it.
And I mean, and you're basically doing this in a way where it's like even pre-lighting. But you don't have to move. You don't have to worry about time. Nobody's kicking you out of this location.
Right.
You're not worrying about necessarily.
And that's what Kubrick did. Kubrick had some quote. He says, "There's two ways of making films. Obviously, there's many ways of making films, but I understood his point. What one is that you get a name." For him, Tom Cruise, Ryan O'Neal.
Then the doors open for you,
and then everybody. There's a lot of money that comes in. Everybody comes together, and they work in a relatively fast time span. Although he took a long time shooting, which is great. That's definitely part of why his films are great, because the time that you take to really think about something and perfect, for lack of a better word. He was definitely a perfectionist. You can feel it. That's part of why his films are hypnotic, is every element is thought about and looked over, and he could tell. And I definitely, that is part of what took long for me. I have I don't like to say it, but even when I was a kid, I was part of a study here in New York when I was born. I was born at Lenox Hill Hospital, and they came with some questionnaire or something. My mother was in the hospital asking about if they wanted to be part of a study, and I was part of a study until I was in my 30s. In fact, Dr. Sylvia Brody was the name of the woman who was the head of the study. Very nice woman. And she only died a couple of years ago. She lived to be 103 or something. Wow. And I bought the book. That was the study I was a part of, just to see if I could recognize myself. I couldn't. It was more like kind of extreme thing.
What was it about?
It was originally supposed to be about how mothers and their children interacted, and it was Freudian based, but then it expanded to just the parents. And they would, when we moved out to Los Angeles, they would send somebody out every year, and it was fun, they would like have water and ask me which things they would put in, which I thought would float or sink, which I guess were children IQ tests or what have you. But they were sort of enjoyable interviews. But my mother told me that at age, I think 2, maybe I was 3, they said to my mother that I was a perfectionist, and my mother thought, "Oh, well, that's nice," but it is a real thing.
Yeah, wow.
Which isn't great.
Yeah.
The thing is about it is that what it is good for is attention to detail in art.
Right.
But that is probably why my films take a long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's parts of it I'm sure I'm not perfectionistic about, but there are parts of it I am.
Yeah.
And I recognize it when there is art. You can tell there are artists that are perfectionists, and I like it. I can see that they really, it's very apparent. I think everybody can kind of tell Kubrick was a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near as much of a perfectionist as Kubrick, but he was also working in a realm where he had a lot of people. I'm working in a very small realm, and you can get things to be done quickly, and that costs more. And if you do things slower, it can cost less.
Yeah.
But that was the other way he said you can do it, is to take time and do something slowly over years, which Eraserhead by Lynch, that was done in that manner.
Yeah.
And I recognized that, and I thought, well, that's more the manner that makes sense for me to work in, is slowly over time. But I have a concept of something that I want to do that I think will hopefully speed up my process, but we'll see.
Are you saying that you could be cured of this perfectionism?
And I'm not sure about that, but I think that's what we'll see. There's a thing that I started shooting already, and I have a concept of how to make it go faster, but I'm busy. I haven't been able to shoot. I shot stuff last year and haven't shot anything this year. I'm busy, so we'll see.
But what was this like for you as an actor to be doing this over this period of time and having to do all this other stuff that you have to do, producing, getting everybody together, directing, but also being in it over this long period of time? What was that like as an actor? Each
of the production segments I was playing a different character,
right?
And so was my
helps.
father.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to carry over the same look, and we were differentiating the look. So each one was its own little sort of movie production segment.
Yeah.
I initially thought I was going to shoot everything in 2013, and then I just started realizing it's too much, because I'm the only producer. There's no production, there's no producer credit on either It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine or the new film. The first film, I sort of learned a lesson to not give out producer credits, because there was somebody, I won't talk about it, but it's like you see films where there are dozens of people as producers. Everybody wants to be called a producer.
Yes.
I get asked that regularly, and I have to refuse, even if somebody was there are people that have been really helpful on the film, but I just learned it's not good to give out a production thing, because it's not really deserved. They might be a production assistant or something, but I mean, I've put a lot of years and work into it. I don't call myself, I mean, that's the colloquial word. I think on this one I've got Crispin Glover Presents, I think is the way I titled it. So, I mean, that's what that is. And that is what I'm doing. I'm presenting this thing that I worked on for a long time. So it's a deserved title.
Yes.
And I try to be very careful about the credits, which I think I probably had the end credit title roll sent to you because the IMDb will not let me correct it. It's really driving me crazy, and it's wrong. They don't even have the title right. It just says "No, you're wrong," and then it says formerly known as, and then it says "No, you're wrong" or "Spooky Extra-Distance." I haven't done this. They have not let me do a single thing. I haven't done a single, and I've tried, and they refuse. Me, I'm the only person that knows, and they will not let me do it. They let other people who are, maybe somebody acted in it or was on the crew, and they have incorrect information and they input it, and IMDb will not let me correct the information.
Is so weird and annoying. Wow. Yeah. Listen, I knew this would happen. You came back miraculously to this podcast, and we talked for so long, and I feel like I need another episode with you. So, one day we have to come back again.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Crispin Glover, thank you so much. I'm so happy you came to town, and I know you will come back again, or if you don't, we'll find you and bring you.
Yeah. I'm sure. I toured for 15 years straight.
Yeah.
So I'm planning, and hopefully we will not have another pandemic. But anything can happen. That's the thing about the pandemic is people were so irritated that there was maybe an overreaction or what have you. But there really could be a much worse pandemic.
Absolutely.
So I keep my fingers crossed because it really is ripe for something really catastrophic to happen.
Right, and at least we know somewhat what to do now, I guess, right?
I mean, if something became breathable, like the bubonic plague, when that became breathable, and what was it? Half the worst in the worst.
People just
versions,
dropping dead.
Like half the population. There was one, I don't remember, 1,500 something, where half the population, every other person that you know is dead. Wow. Yeah. That could happen. Absolutely. So
So barring that,
I'll be on. I plan to be on the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.